The Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America and Ukrainian saboteurs jointly prepared the sabotage of the Nord Streams in 2022. Such shocking information is reported today by the German publication Spiegel. The publication claims that allegedly in the spring of 2022, employees of the American CIA and Ukrainian specialists in sabotage operations met in Kyiv to jointly plan an operation to blow up the Nord Stream Russian gas pipeline to Europe. The publication Spiegel provides a chronology of the operation's preparation and claims that the Americans were at least aware of the preparation of this operation. Currently, Boris, a former Ukrainian Special Forces officer, is being held in custody in Hamburg, and he is suspected of being involved in the pipeline explosions in September 2022. At that time, let me remind you, 6 men, according to the investigation, and 1 woman went out into the Baltic Sea on a rented yacht and eventually attached explosives to the pipeline. According to the arrest warrant, the operation was most likely carried out under state control. But here, the implication is towards Ukraine. The publication refers to history. In this episode, I won't draw my own conclusions, but will only present the facts published today by Spiegel and add information that has appeared earlier. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave your comment below. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. So, the German publication Der Spiegel claims that the operation to blow up the Nord Stream gas pipeline was allegedly prepared by Ukrainians and specialists from the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. The publication writes that as early as the spring of 2022, old acquaintances from the CIA and Ukrainian sabotage specialists met to discuss the idea of the explosion. And next is a quote from Spiegel. According to insiders, the Ukrainians brought the idea with them to the meeting. They wanted to blow up the Nord Stream gas pipeline. Billions of cubic meters of gas were transported through these pipelines from Russia to Germany, thereby financing Moscow's war against their country. Later, the Ukrainian participants told their trusted contacts that the Americans apparently liked this plan. It is believed that this was followed by further meetings between CIA representatives and the organizers of the attacks on the gas pipelines at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Spiegel journalists were able to talk to several people in Ukraine who provided details of these meetings. According to them, the Americans knew about the attack plans much earlier than previously thought. According to insiders, in the spring of 2024, American agents appeared before the organizers of the Nord Stream attack, at least as sympathetic listeners. They exchanged information about the technical details of the sabotage operation. And at this point, I should immediately note that the CIA spokesperson today called this information absolutely false and added that the United States agency had nothing to do with the operation. But despite the denial from American intelligence, Spiegel decided to pursue his own investigation. At the moment, the former Ukrainian Special Forces officer, we'll refer to him in this episode as Serhiy K., is being held in custody in Hamburg, accused of involvement in the sabotage of the gas pipelines. In September 2022, several men and women were sailing in the Baltic Sea on a rented yacht called Andromeda near the island of Bornholm. Divers planted military-grade explosives on the pipelines on the seabed. According to the federal court ruling in the case of Serhiy K., made public in mid-January, the operation was apparently organized by a state. The documents suggest that the operation was not just carried out by a group of people, but was coordinated by the leadership of a state. It is obvious that the hint here is at Ukraine, and I want to make a very important remark. Russians are now really hoping that if the court in Hamburg decides that it was Ukraine that blew up Nord Stream, the Germans will immediately stop all support for Kyiv. They say there are also parties in Germany, like Alternative for Germany, that will definitely stir up this story to completely cut Ukraine off from German aid. But back in November 2025, people close to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said they would be able to fend off opposition claims and overall would be understanding if it turns out that yes, indeed, it was true. Ukraine blew up the gas pipeline since Friedrich Merz himself has long opposed the Nord Streams and says they will never be revived. But secondly, the German government tends to believe that, in the context of war, Ukraine had every right to carry out such sabotage. Moreover, back in the fall of last year, the Wall Street Journal conducted a study and concluded that even then, society had mostly accepted the version that Ukraine was behind the explosions. Therefore, it's not worth thinking that this will critically affect Germany's support for Ukraine. But let's get back to the Der Spiegel article. As the publication writes, it has now become known that American intelligence officers apparently knew about the attack plan at an early stage and initially did not object to it. According to the investigation, they only later made changes, which were made with the permission of the Ukrainians. The waiters, however, found Positiva. Larissa Leonardo, who nodded, was afraid of being late and of sabotage, having previously worked in the security service of Ukraine. He is allegedly considered as such. General Unknown stood in an elite unit created with the participation of the CIA. After the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, the so-called 5th Directorate of the Security Service of Ukraine became famous for its impressive operations against the unwashed Russians. Targeted killings, for example in Moscow, were also part of the arsenal of this secret unit. After Chervinsky moved to Ukrainian military intelligence in 2019, the secret work against Moscow continued. And now Spiegel writes that allegedly at the beginning of the full-scale war, Chervinsky and his colleagues reunited with the Ukrainian Army Special Forces, and this whole group worked with the Americans. And next, I'll quote Spiegel again. In the spring of 2022, apparently, new ideas were needed to inflict significant damage on Russia. An old idea resurfaced, to attack the Nord Stream gas pipeline. The pipelines in the Baltic Sea had long been a thorn in the side for Ukraine and most Western countries. Nord Stream allowed Russia to supply gas directly to Europe, bypassing Ukrainian gas corridors, which caused Kiev to lose significant transit fees. At the same time, the pipelines made Germany dependent on the Kremlin. Without them, Russia would lose an important political tool. That's exactly how the saboteurs thought. The United States was never a supporter of the pipelines stretching more than 1,200 kilometers from Russia to Germany. At the beginning of 2022, then United States President Joe Biden threatened to stop the Nord Stream 2 project in light of its planned launch. And now, as Der Spiegel claims, supposedly over the course of several weeks and months, Ukrainians were developing a plan to have divers plant bombs on the pipelines. They considered various routes from the vessel, discussed explosives, and looked for suitable men and women capable of diving to depths of up to 80 meters. The saboteurs, as the publication writes, even gave the operation a code name, Operation Diameter. According to insiders, the operation was ultimately approved by the then Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksiy Zaluzhny, but it was not approved by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Allegedly, this operation was developed behind his back, but at the same time, Ukrainian special forces consulted with the Americans. This is the version that Spiegel gives us. And, as the publication writes, already at the second meeting to discuss the plan, the Americans supported the idea of the attack. Now, the CIA has stated that Spiegel's investigation, quote, should not be considered reliable information. But I should note that Spiegel is not the first to provide such information. Well, for example, The New Yorker, which is an American publication, wrote in an article back in 2025 that the CIA, at the very least, knew about the likely preparation of sabotage in the early stages. At the same time, Spiegel claims, quote, the United States government apparently made active efforts to prevent this attack. It is reported that a CIA representative spoke with the administration of President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, demanding the operation be cancelled, but the warnings were ignored and the group of saboteurs continued their activities even without United States approval. According to Spiegel's investigation, the secret unit found a new sponsor, a private individual from Ukraine. According to insiders, this private individual covered a significant portion of the expenses, about $300,000, for equipment, boat rental, and explosives. And according to the investigation, in Germany on September 7, 2022, a sailing yacht left from Warnemünde in the Baltic Sea, and according to investigators, there were 6 men and 1 woman on board. German investigators believe that at the helm was Commandos Sergei K., who is currently under investigation. Almost 3 weeks later, seismographs in Sweden recorded strong tremors from the explosions, and a carpet of gas bubbles up to 1 kilometer wide rose to the surface of the sea. 3 out of 4 Nord Stream pipelines were eventually destroyed. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to like if you found this episode interesting and useful. You can support our YouTube channel financially with your donation or a paid subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. There are completely different platforms there, so choose the one that's most convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you give. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.